Hello and welcome to Filmi Ladies. We're Pithu and Beth, and today's episode is a continuation of the Kapoor Khandan. Beth's wallpaper will inform you which Kapoor's family tree family branch we're gonna talk about, and it is of course Filmi Ladies' favorite, Shashi Kapoor. Our last Kapoor episode, we were talking about Randhir, Rajiv, and Babita. So it was a little bit difficult, although we still managed to talk for like more than an hour. And I'm hoping that this one is going to be a little bit easier. So we're going to talk about five movies. I rewatched Junoon because it has Shashi and Jennifer Kendal, his wife, in it. I also rewatched. Hero Hiralal because that has Sanjana Kapoor, their daughter. And I watched for the first time what is the movie I watched for the first time? Beth, my brain is not working anymore.
Sultana, right?
Yes, I watched Sultanate. It was so fabulous that it fried my brain and I couldn't remember it. That is my excuse.
Understandably, that movie has everything.
I watched it for Karan Kapoor and I was pleasantly surprised that it had a gigantic ensemble cast. I had no idea. Absolutely. Also, Sridevi is in it and she is Sunny Deol's romantic lead, and my brain is very frazzled due to this. Beth watched 36 Charangi Lane because that has Jennifer Kendal and it does have Sanjana Kapoor in a small role. And then she also watched Vijeta, which has Shashi Kapoor, and it has Kunal Kapoor. So between the two of us, we have covered all three siblings and Shashi and his wife. So I think we deserve kudos just for that.
Mhm.
So tell me about 36 Charangi Lane.
So this is a movie I have been meaning to watch for
Forever.
15 years, 12 years, some very long time. And I was under the impression that it was, I'm just going to say depressing.
Mm.
And I did not find it so. So if you, like me, have been putting it off because you just felt like, oh, this is a little too heavy or a little too sad or something like that, I would encourage you to give it a try. Anyway, I did not, it is not light and breezy and super fun, but it is not gonna depress you, I don't think. The story is, Jennifer Kendal plays an English woman who has lived her whole life in Calcutta, and her father worked for the Indian Railways, and she is now about 60, I believe. So she is a good 10 years older or more than Jennifer Kendal actually was. Is a school teacher. Her brother, played by her real life father, Jeffrey Kendal, is in a nursing home. He has diabetes quite badly and some other conditions, and he's clearly not really like able to grasp reality very well. Her niece, played by Soni Razdan, has gone off to get married and is far away. And that's basically all the connections she had in the world or has in the world. We find out her sweetheart died in World War II. It is 1970 something in the film, no, that's not right. Is that right? No, it would be not. It's contemporary to when it's made. I'm sorry, so it's early 1980s, and she reconnects with a former student played by Debashri Roy, who, if you have not looked at my Ganguly Mukherjee Samarth family tree lately, like she's connected in there because of course she is. She's related to Rani Mukherjee, for example. Great star of Bengali cinema. She plays the former student, and she and her boyfriend, Jyotiram Chatterjee, who you know from various turns in various things, including Ray, strike up a friendship with the teacher, and various things happen. And it's a really interesting look at, I think, connectivity, connection, loneliness, friendships, belonging, self-determination, a lot of things like that. And there's some very gentle sort of other threads in the background involving a few of the other people, including some of the teachers that Violet Stoneham is her name, Violet works with. As a middle-aged woman who lives on her own, this strikes close to home in some ways that I was like, oh, am I gonna be able to watch this? Oh, but I really liked it, and it has a gentleness to it that I associate with Bengali cinema of certain eras, and Aparna Sen obviously is a part of that. I believe this was her first directed film. She also wrote it, and it's simply lovely. I have seen Jennifer Kendal in a few other things, never in a role this significant. And I have not liked her particularly as an actor,
Interesting.
but I really liked her in this. I do also like her in Bombay Talkie, but
Mhm.
her character is pretty off-putting in that one. So it was fun to really see her get to do a full role. It's been a long time since I've seen Bombay Talkie, and this is really lovely. She's really, really good in it, I think.
I did read an interesting thing about 36 Sharingi Lane. I've been wanting to watch it forever as well. And I read that Aparna Sen was finding it hard to find someone to produce the film,
Yeah.
financiers. And so she managed to get through to Shashi Kapoor and asked if he would be willing to produce it. And he said yes. And later, because the film bombed, as I think most of
Mm.
his productions bombed, he basically called it a total loss. And he said he had to hire, like he had to literally pay theaters to show this film. Um, I mean, Shashi Kapoor's productions, though, are so amazing. I
They're
mean,
so
these movies
good.
are classics. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I both love Junoon. Both of us love Utsav. You love Ajuba. and and it's like all of these films have bombed at the box office. And it's
Yeah.
like, what's a guy to do? I literally had a thought where I was like, how were bills being paid? And then you, of course, reminded me that he did do movies like Satyam Shivam Sundaram, which were probably keeping the family
Yeah.
afloat.
Yeah.
Um,
I really wonder how much of this one is tinged with a little bit of autobiographical thought for
mm.
Jennifer Kendal as performing this role because, her family did leave India and she stayed
Ah,
behind,
okay.
and she, if I recall correctly, she did do some schooling in England as a child. So she had not spent her whole life in India,
Mm,
but a significant chunk of it, and obviously chose to stay on.
mhm.
Um, and I just sort of wonder, obviously she's got a tight family life. Now we know that their marriage was not perfect, but um, I've never heard anything about her relationship with the kids. So
Really?
yeah, I just don't know. Hopefully she was more happy than she was sad and things like that. But it just watching her micro expressions,
Mm,
lovely, lovely. And maybe again, this is a theater thing, maybe, or she, because obviously she didn't stay particularly active as an actor, right? Like after she
mhm.
got married, she left her father's theater company, as far as I can recall, and she doesn't do a lot of. So this and Bombay Talkie are her two major roles in cinema, as I recall. Like she's in Shakespeare Walla for a
Right.
nanosecond. She's in
She has a
Heat.
big role in Junoon.
Yeah, she does. And she's in Heat and Dust just a little bit, nothing too significant. I believe she has one other film as well, at least. But to be able to stay this much in your game after not really having done very much for a very long time, I think is quite impressive. And um, I will admit that I find part of my issue with Jennifer Kendal has been her voice. I find her voice really irritating. It's very high.
It's
Uh,
very
it's
thin.
very thin and kind of reedy and everything. But
Yeah.
I settled in this really well. And I think because the character is older than she is, that
Mm,
also kind of helps. Um, so don't be shallow like me. Give it a try. Give some of her other stuff a try. I really thought she was moving, and so many just quiet things are kind of flickering across her face, and the way she uses, her body language and everything is really very, very good. And at one point I thought, oh, it would have been interesting if Shashi had been in this too, because her two of her children, um, Sad, Sanjana, somebody up different,
Sanjana.
a different paragraph podcast, Sanjana and Karan are in this as childhood versions of Violet and then someone else. Um, and I'm like, oh, it's too bad Shashi isn't there too. But I'm like, where would he have fit? Like, I'm sure he could have done
Right.
something well, but there's not even much by way of, there's no character his age in the film. So,
Right.
because the people she befriends are younger, they're fairly
Mhm.
recent graduates from the school. So, um, but I know she got a lot of accolades for this role, and I can see why.
It's also really interesting because if she was 50 at the time and she was playing a 60-year-old person and this entire script and this entire movie revolved around her,
Yeah,
I mean, it's really hard to get those films funded and
yeah,
it's really hard to get people to go see those movies. And it's
uh,
hard even today. So back then in the 80s when Amitabh and all of these other actors were still ruling the roost. I mean, of course, a movie like this is not going to compete with the big giant
Yeah.
Thrishus and Amarok Anthony's and
Yeah.
stuff, but still, I mean, they people just don't write roles for actresses of a certain age, and to not even have like a love story angle or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think if Shashi Kapoor had refused to fund it, I don't think this movie could have been made. And
It's
I
pretty
feel
hard to
like that,
imagine. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like that about a lot of his productions, which is why I feel like so grateful to him. Because again, who would have made a movie like, Junoon? Okay, Junoon, maybe, it's a Sham
Like, I
Benegal
feel like I can see the
directorial, and
NFDC
yeah,
doing Janoon.
but it's really hard to get someone to do Utsav.
Yeah.
Utsav was just
That's
so
the most difficult of them, I think.
difficult. And
Yeah.
then to have an actress like Rekha, I mean, to first of all, to be able to sign someone of the stature of Rekha and the
Mhm.
big paycheck
Mhm.
you had to give her,
Mhm.
and she's a woman in her sexual peak, and she's unafraid to explore her sexuality and all of that stuff. I mean, again, I have no idea what strings this man had to pull to get that movie made as well. But as much as I love Shashi Kapoor the actor, I almost love Shashi Kapoor the producer more.
Sure. I
Yeah.
think that's valid. He, especially now that I guess I've seen all of his produced films now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'll toss in, just because you mentioned it with Reka, Shashi Kapoor's films as a producer are much more um sexy and
Yeah.
acknowledge sex in a more sort of grown up,
Mature
overt,
way.
mature, full way than many, many, many other Indian films do. And it's
Hmm.
interesting that someone who had such a strong career in mainstream cinema still, you know, delivers this in ways that many don't. And again, maybe that's partly a
Yeah.
theater background thing where there's, but I don't know much about the plays he was in, so
Right.
I can't speak to that. But
I almost feel
yeah, it's
like it
impressive.
was just his sensibilities. I
I
mean,
think
he's always
so.
struck me as the most mature and the sensible of the Kapoors. And
Hmm.
I do think that even though he made his name in masala movies, I think his heart
Oh yeah.
basically lay in the parallel scene because that's what he chose to put his money in.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for him, but he was like, you know what? The parallel thing isn't working out, so I'm going to make Ajuba, and then Ajuba flopped. So I had never, I mean, okay, so the only Jennifer Kendal movie I'd ever seen was Junoon, and I'd seen it so long ago that I needed to sort of rewatch it just to
Yeah.
refresh my memory. And honestly, the main thing I remembered from Junoon was Shashi Kapoor as Javed Khan with his eyes full of surma and his mustache and his outfits and his turban and his long hair, and he is just so delectable. Also, he is the poster child for pretty privilege because he
Yeah.
can play an absolute rake, which he does. He is misogynistic, he is ruthless, he is bloodthirsty, he is all the terrible things, and my heart still beats for him. And I'm like,
Mm.
no, no, you're supposed to hate this character. Remember, you're supposed to hate Javed Khan. Okay, look how badly he treats his wife, the wonderful Shabana Azmi. You cannot be on his side, and yet I'm on his side because I also am superficial like you.
Well, the character is I mean, the smolder is
It's
intense
the
in that
kajal.
film.
It's the
Yeah.
surma. You
Yeah.
put brown men in kajal, whether it's Kabir Bedi or Shashi Kapoor, whoever, and they just smolder. And
Yeah.
of course, don't cut their hair. Give them the long hair.
Right. We were discussing yesterday a screenshot Pitu shared with me, and we were thinking like, wouldn't it have been amazing to see Shashi Kapoor in like David Bowie glam rock gear?
Yeah.
Like I have some Photoshop skills. They're probably not quite good enough to do that, but I am tempted.
I was just going to say, you have some Photoshop skills. So I think that you need to do a Photoshop, like a GIF, an animated GIF, where he's wearing like a silver jumpsuit.
Mm.
I think that would be
Can they
excellent.
have
Like
the Aladdin
channel.
saying like,
Yes.
you know?
But so anyway, I digress.
Mm,
So all I essentially remembered about Junoon was how amazing Shashi was as Javed Khan. I'd completely forgotten Shabana Azmi was in it. I'd completely
mm,
forgotten about Jennifer Kendal. I didn't particularly remember what she did in the film. I did remember Nafisa Ali because she was just so stunningly beautiful in this movie. And I vaguely remembered the music as well. So
mm.
rewatching it, and especially watching it from the lens of the podcast and thinking about Jennifer Kendal as an actress, I really liked her.
Good.
And I had no opinions about her prior to this because
Mm-hmm.
this is the only thing I've seen her in. Um, I agree about the voice. And I couldn't tell if it was her lack of fluency in Hindi or the fact that her
Oh.
character is just not supposed to be fluent. But then even when she spoke in English, she still had that readiness, and it's a very
Mm-hmm.
thin voice, and it was surprising to me because typically in my experience theater people have voices that they can really project right to the back
Yeah.
of the room. So I was like, how is this incredibly
I mean,
frail
if you
voice?
don't lose it, you if you don't use it, you lose it. Maybe
Yeah.
I wonder if she's just so out of practice because I'm looking at her filmography and there's, before Janoon, she hadn't done a film for 8 years.
Wow. Okay.
So she's kind of out of
Yeah,
practice, I
it
guess.
definitely annoyed me as well. But
Yeah.
her body language, her micro expressions, she's amazing. Like all
Yeah.
the emotions that this woman goes through, because there's all this trauma that they're basically being hunted down. She, her mother,
Mhm.
and her daughter Nafisa Ali. Her husband has just been shot, like he's just been stabbed to death,
That's great.
and they're on the run. And at first, Kulbhushan Kharbanda is, like giving them a place to stay, giving them refuge, and then Javed Khan, basically Shashi Kapoor, essentially kidnaps them. It's not
Yeah.
like he gives them an option,
No.
and he takes them off to their Haveli, and then he falls in love with Nafisa Ali while he's already married to his wife Shabana, and he's such a jerk to Shabana. Every time he was mean to Shabana, I was just like, "Can you stop that?" Um, but all the emotions that she has to go through, she is traumatized, she's terrified, but she still has to be strong for her daughter who is so young, who is absolutely, panic stricken, who is waking up with nightmares every night because she keeps replaying these images of violence in her head. The conflicting emotions, like every time a man, whether it's Kulbhushan Kharbanda or
Mhm.
Shashi Kapoor, every time they're being even remotely nice to her, she has to think to herself, are they really going to help me, or am I a pawn? And she is a pawn. They're just using her in
Yeah.
ways that they can. And then, trying to be resourceful, trying to figure out ways that she can get to her brothers so that they can protect her. um, her interactions with the other women, her interactions with, Shabana, who feels extremely threatened by the fact that her
Mm.
husband is essentially, announcing that he's going to marry Nafisa. She was just exceptional. And she actually didn't have a lot of dialogues. There was just a lot of emoting with the eyes, emoting with the
Yeah.
face. And I found the casting really interesting because in this movie, she is not Shashi Kapoor's love interest. Her daughter, Nafisa Ali, is his love interest. So she would almost be his mother-in-law by,
Yeah.
I mean, she would be his mother-in-law
Yeah.
by marriage if that were to happen. And I just found that very interesting also. Like why did they do that casting? But it worked. It was really cool. It really worked. Um and yeah, I was very impressed with her performance. I thought she was really good. And I wished I had seen her in more
Mm.
stuff. I did have issues with the dialogue delivery, but like I said, also, I don't know if she was actually fluent in Hindi or not. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't.
She must have been.
But I was going to say, for the context of this movie,
Yeah.
it would make sense for her not to be,
Right.
because I don't think she portrays a person. Well, no, actually, she portrays a person who is born and raised in India because her mother, Mariam, is from a Nawabi family and her dad is British. So
Mm.
technically, she is like fully Indian born and bred. So
Mm.
then her accent should have been better in that case. Um,
Maybe it's a mark of, I don't want to learn that language and like the sort of
hmm.
cultural, snobbery and things like that. Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked her acting in it. I thought she was really lovely in that. I did find the casting a little bit strange, but I got over it quickly. Um, and then what other movie did you see? Let's talk about the
I
kids.
also saw Vegeta, which again has been on my list forever. And I had put it off because I thought, is this just a military movie? No, it is not. It, if you don't know this story, so you have not seen it, right, Pitu?
I have not.
I think you will love it. I will encourage you
Okay.
to add it near the top of your list. So the basic story is Shashi and Rekha are married. Love them as a couple.
They're
So
so good
interesting. And
together.
I just want to say before I go even further, Shashi is very good in this movie. Rekha is even better.
Oh,
She's amazing. Amazing. Um, and
I do need to watch this movie then.
their son is Shashi's real son, Kunal. I believe in his first film. Little like blue-eyed boy.
Oh.
The
Oh, so
Kapoor,
he's a little boy in the movie.
not little, he's like 20 or something, I think. So
Oh,
he's
okay.
he's been kicked out of a boarding school. His
Mm,
parents have a lot of tension in their marriage because Shashi cheated. Uh, and the subtitles say it was with, they use the word prostitute.
mm,
Um, and they have you see an argument about that, and you see Kunal witnessing, like
mm,
overhearing the argument and, things like that. So home is not a great place. Shashi's mother also lives with them. And the film actually opens with Shashi and his mother going through the violence of partition,
mm,
where somebody is killed like in the grandmother's lap, or like
mm.
she's holding a dying, there's blood everywhere and things like that. It is very masala-y blood. It was not the tone I expected from this movie, but they leave that behind. But anyway, so he's kind of this lost, teenager, maybe
Mm,
20 or something. Um, Om Puri plays Rekha's brother, and he is in the Navy, and he has good advice for Kunal, who decides he wants to go to the National Defense Academy. He gets in. Now, it seems to me that he kind of breezes through some of the requirements that I would have assumed would be a little stricter, especially because they talk about that. Like Shashi, says to him, like, if you drop out of this, like you've dropped out of other things, your mother's going to be very disappointed. And like, can you actually do this? But so then the film follows him to the Defense Academy and some of the friends he meets and like the training. And he wants to be a fighter pilot. Like, you can't just be in the Air Force. You want to be a fighter pilot. Like,
I would
you know,
love this movie.
you would. This movie is a really much better done version of Fauji. Honestly, this movie is Fauji.
Okay. Oh,
It's so similar. And I can't believe I've never noticed anyone saying that before. But having watched, Fudgy fairly recently and then seeing this, I was like, this is the same thing. It's not as funny,
okay.
but it is very similar.
Which one came first, Fauji or Vijeta?
Vegeta
Okay.
by not quite a decade. Um
Oh,
it
so maybe
is
it was inspired by it.
it has to be. It has to be because it even ends with them going to an armed conflict.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is set in the early 70s. I was mixing up my two films. So it's set about a little more than 10 years earlier than it was made. Um, and then, so there's kind of interesting tracks with Rekha and Shashi's relationship. Then Amrish Puri is their kind of like one of their lead teachers, and I forget what title he has, but he's the one
Of
teaching them
course.
how to do like spins and terrifying things in airplanes. His daughter is Patak.
Supriya Pathak?
Yes,
Ratna Pathak. Oh, Supriya.
Supriya, and she and Kunal have a little romance, which of course also is like fudgy, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and it's great. There's a lot of emphasis here on kind of fathers and sons and father figures
Mm,
and sons. Amrish Puri and his daughter are Christians.
mhm,
There's some things in Shashi and Rekha's family. He is sick, but not really practicing, but his mother is
mhm,
more devout, and they decided to raise their son that way. Rekha is Hindu.
mhm.
It's just it. So that's kind of in the background. There's a lot of interesting stuff. I'll add that I was shocked by seeing their apartment, because I'm like, this apartment belongs in Kali Yuga. This is the same, like the same
Mm,
visuals. I was like, oh, Shashi Kapoor's producer has a,
yeah.
and you're like, oh,
Or
this
New
is
Delhi
where,
Times. New
right.
Delhi
This is,
Times has a very similar part. I am so convinced that a lot of these parallel films that were made of shoestring budgets, they basically would just call up rich friends and be like, hey, can we shoot?
I mean, what if it's their
Because
apartment? At
they're
one
too
point, I was like, is
authentic.
this what their apartment looks like? Because he really likes this vibe. Um, and okay, so as someone who is not particularly interested in military as a background, there are a lot of shots of planes doing things and soldiers
Mm,
marching around and stuff. Honestly, I fast forwarded. I am
yeah.
aware that a lot of people were very struck by this footage at the time. It was very
Mm,
impressive to people. I sus I don't know this. I suspect this was the biggest hit that Shashi produced. Like, this is a very well regarded film that is more
mhm.
popular, I think, than you know, 36 Charming Lane, or even
Yeah.
Janoon and Utsav, or
Hmm.
in Kali. So
Yeah.
this one, I think this one had kind of a further reach, and people really love, and it stands out as a film that is about a military context, but is not patriotic, really. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like a chest thumping jingoistic kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing at all. So it's a much more nuanced portrayal of military life. There are ways in which it is not very nuanced, but overall, I would say. So I think
Mm-hmm.
you, with a family with a military background, would be really interested in a lot of this. Kunal
Yeah.
Kapoor is, of the Kapoor children, of the Shashi Jennifer children I've seen, by far the best actor of the three. Now, I'm not going to say that means a whole lot necessarily, because I know
Okay.
that bar is quite low. I thought he was lovely in this, and maybe it was just a really good match of character to child to actor, because anything that seemed kind of hesitating or halting about him could be the character, right? He's
Mm.
this kind of lost boy who's trying to find his way, and he chooses one of the more extreme routes, right? Like, I don't know what to
Right.
do with my life. I'll join the Air Force Academy. Like, that's pretty
It's a bit
severe.
like Ritik's character from Lakshya.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
Wake Up Sid if Sid decided to
Mm-hmm.
go into the military instead of
Mm-hmm.
being a photographer,
And
right?
he's, there's a real sadness on his face a lot that tracks, because his parents are having, a hard
Mm.
time. Um, and watching Shashi and Kunal together, you're always like, oh, it's so interesting to have to play kind of a harsh father with the son, and how their relationship changes over time. I will issue a statement that if you would like some spoilers about this film, feel free to email me, because I have heard a lot of talk about this film over the years, and then something happens about 60% of the way through that was a real gut punch to me that I did not know was going to happen. So if
In a
you
good way or a bad way? The gut
sad,
punch.
sad gut
Oh,
punch.
okay.
Like, narratively interesting and propelling things, but also
Mm.
like, oh, I did not see that coming.
Okay.
This does, in some ways, this does adhere to very standard tropes about like a young man finding himself, and also like training for military and then going actually into an armed conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like a sports movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
we know
Oh, I
these things,
love
but then there
sports
were other
movies.
things. I do too. There were
Yeah.
other things that were different. So this too is, overall, I would say, gentle. It is
Mm.
lovely. It has very strong performances. Kunal Kapoor does a lot with his face. Like, he doesn't have as many lines as you might think he would, but there's a lot of expressions happening. His little, they're not that young. I don't want to say his little friends, but his friends in the academy, like, they have nice relationships and interesting conversations. His romance is cute.
Does
Is
anyone
lovely.
say, I say chaps?
No, but there is a slogan that they repeat over and
Oh,
over about, like, I want to be an arrow piercing the sky. Like, I want to be a jet, a jet
okay.
pilot, or
Yeah.
a fighter pilot in a jet. So that, even that, I was like, this is Fudgy ripped this off big time. um, yeah, I'm not sure what else to say other than highly recommend. And I was very impressed by Kunal.
I'm definitely going to watch it.
You'll
But
love
I
it.
have two questions.
Yeah.
One, why, what made you say that Rekha is like so much better than Shashi in this movie? Because it seems almost like Shashi would have the more author back part, being that it's like a
Yeah.
father and
It's
son
not that the role
thing.
is better necessarily, but when the analogy is always like the snake recoils before it strikes, and
Yes.
Reka had that energy
Or
to
the
me, because
bouncing
she is this,
energy.
yeah, because she is this she's not exactly, long suffering makes her sound kind of more, I think, downtrodden than she really is. But she is someone who has had a a hurtful thing happen in her relationship, and they clearly have not figured out how to talk about it. And so it
Ah.
festers.
So it's like
And
this
her
tension in the air.
Yeah, and her husband, so we've also got the Punjabi, and then she's Marathi, kind of
Mm.
that kind of stuff going on. So, like, he's brash, he drinks a lot. He works in
He's a
ad
Kapoor.
films. He's a Kapoor, so he works in like making television commercials, or filmed commercials. And you see him go to set, and it's like people in aerobics leotards doing like cheesy kind of
Right.
pop dancing and stuff, where she's at home playing Hindustani classical music, or
Yeah,
classical
playing a
music anyway.
sitar.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got, and they don't hammer that too much, but it's there for you to pick up on. So this is a relationship that is very strained. And he is the more
Hmm.
boisterous one and does a lot more talking. But when she talks, it's really great.
Interesting.
And you
And that
see,
seems like such a Rekha
it
thing to
does,
do
doesn't it? It's
too.
perfect.
Yeah.
Now, I read somewhere that originally Shabana Azmi was considered for this role, and given her affair with Shashi, Jennifer Kendal apparently said, "Oh no, you won't,"
Wow, I love
to
that.
her husband, I guess. So that did not happen. But I honestly, I think Reka is the best possible choice for this. Like, sure, Shabana could do it, but there's something
Yeah.
about these people who we know from Masala when they go a different way, like some of what
Mm.
that, and even if it's just an audience expectation thing, some of what they bring to that is really rich. And there's
But some
also
of that
some,
is also just Rekha's
yeah,
inherent
well, exactly.
fierceness.
She's
Like
so
she's
fierce.
fierce.
Yeah. And like in this joint, it's kind of, it's not quite a, I don't know if you count it as a joint family, but the mother-in-law is there, right?
Yeah.
Rekha's mother-in-law. And they have a lovely relationship, which you
Hmm.
don't necessarily expect, right? You expect there to be tension there, but they were actually very supportive of each other, and that's really nice.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
it's just, and so when Kunal comes home from boarding school where he's basically been kicked out, um, he comes home, his father's mad that he's there and that he's got, not in this school, and he leaves. He goes outside, and Reka comes outside and finds him kind of leaning against their car, and she goes and she says something like, if you figured everything out now, what would there be left for you to do in your life? Which I think is such a
Mm.
lovely response to the lost teenage slash 20 something,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a great, it's affirming that you feel lost, but it's also helping you realize maybe a little bit that you don't, it's okay to be lost. And she says, so one of them has the car keys with them, and she says, get in the car. And they go driving, and she drives him down Marine Drive, I think is where they are. They're by
Mm-hmm.
the sea. Um, just out, mother son out for a drive and having a good talk, and that's
Hmm.
like, I've never seen that in a Hindi movie before.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. Who
It's
is
really
the
lovely.
director of this movie?
The director is, I should know this off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. Oh, Govind Nilani.
Ah, okay. And it's written by Dilip Chitre and Satyadev Dubey, right?
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
those are giant names. Like when you told me you had picked Vijeta, and I was like, ah, yes, another movie on our ever expanding watch
Yeah,
list that just never gets
yeah.
seen. And Dilip Chitre is one of the greatest Marathi poets of all time. Like he's
Mm.
amazing. We studied Dilip Chitre and Arun
Oh,
Kolhatkar
wow.
in school, and he's just like so radical, so amazing. And Satyadev Dubey is, of course, like one of the greatest playwrights ever. You know, he's Lila Dubey's husband, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which also blew my mind when I
Amazing.
first
Yeah. Oh, I
discovered
love
that because I was
her.
like, Pandit Satyadev Dubey, Lilith Dubey. What? That is like such a chalk and cheese combination to think of, but clearly it worked. So I mean, the fact that these two people wrote the story and the fact that Govind Nalani was the director, that alone sells it for me. But I'm also very surprised. Oh, so my second question that I had for you was, so if this was Kunal Kapoor's first film, and this movie was a success and it was well received and even his acting was good, it seems like, why do you think he didn't do any more movies or didn't explore acting
I don't
further?
know. I'm just assuming he didn't want to for some
Okay.
reason. I don't know. So he was 23 when when the film came out. So not, he's like a
Hmm.
smidge older than the character. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was watching his younger siblings debut and flop, or
Maybe it was
Jennifer Kendall
yeah.
dies in 1984 right after this, so maybe there's enough kind of just grief or doing something with his to help his dad, or that poor
Yeah.
family, so maybe that's part of it. I
I
don't think the
think the
film was
80s were
known for
also
that.
like a really rough time to debut.
I don't know what he would have been doing in some of these films, right? So
Yeah.
again, like, I would also slot him with what I said about 636 Chowringhee, which is like, if he could have been in Bengali cinema, I see like
Mhm.
the mainstream Bengali is gentler at this time still, like not as much as maybe in the 60s and 50s that I'm more used to, but it's just these different types of heroes that are in different cinemas and whatever. So I wonder if he could have done something more there. I have no idea if he had any interest. Yeah, and that's the other thing. I don't know if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe he watches the exhaustion of his father and is like, "Oh, thank you." I don't remember if he did anything with the theater, even sort of helping with the theater or not.
He's
Um,
the sibling that I know nothing about because
yeah.
I know that Karan Kapoor is like a photographer
Hmm.
in London, and I know Sanjana Kapoor, of course, is everyone knows
Oh,
her about
well, it does say
Prithvi.
So Wikipedia scholar says in 1987 he stopped acting and set up his own company to produce and direct TV commercials.
Oh,
He was
okay.
also, and that company did line productions for international feature films and ad films in India. So it sounds like he's working, but in a different capacity. I don't know what the reviews of this film, of his performance in this film were. I was very impressed. He's a
Okay.
little older in it than I thought he was, but still, I mean, I thought he was, I thought he was very good, and
Wow,
definitely
I'm
better
really
than either
intrigued
Karan
now.
or Sanjana,
Sanjana.
based on what I've seen.
Sanjana, I actually have a soft spot for because Hero
Well, as a
Hiralal,
human, she seems so cool, right? Like
she's so cool. I
Shashi's
love
kids
her.
also just like this is if I had to be in a Kapoor family, this is for sure the one I would want
Yeah,
to be a part of. Like they seem like cool kids who have been
yeah. Well-rounded.
well-rounded and like either supported to go and do what they want, or at least found ways to go and do what they want. I'm sure their name was helpful to them, but they, they made different paths.
Hmm.
And even, even the daughter is like out in the world doing cool things, and
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting. So they all seem like kind of cool people to me.
yeah.
I am biased by Shashi, and I also love Jennifer as a human, so like I admit it.
Right.
But
No, but I mean, the kids, especially Sanjana Kapoor, she really stands out for how amazing she is with like Prithvi Theatre. And then she started her own like Junoon Theatre. And then I've seen some of her interviews over the years where she talks about Prithvi specifically. And she
mm,
just sounds so down to earth. And she
mm,
specifically says that we're not elitist. We don't want to be
mm,
elitist. You can knock on my office door and come in, and I could be grumpy that day and I might be a little bit short with you, but you still have access to me, and I don't want you to have to go through 500 people to get to me. And she does so much for like traveling theater and stuff. I also think it's very cool that she was married to Valmik Thapar,
yeah,
who is one of India's biggest like wildlife
yeah,
conservationists, and he's written all these books on like tigers and stuff. So
yeah.
I'm also a little partial to her for her like
Yeah.
marriage choice.
She,
um
hers is the life we would want, right?
yes,
Of
yeah.
like
I
anyone who
even
was raised in a film family, that's the
Yeah,
one.
I even love her fashion so much. Like she is
Hmm.
such a like in Mumbai terms, she's such a typical theater lady. Like in Mumbai, we say like such an NCPA lady because all of those people like Palpadamsi, Dolly Thakur, all of the Lilet Dubey, all of them, they all wear like they have a uniform, right? They all wear like a handloom cotton sari, casually draped over. They all have like the big bindi and the silver oxidized jewelry
Love
and
it.
like the stack of bracelets, and they're all like gesticulating wildly while they talk about theater and everything. And they're just so adorable. Like it's such a specific subset. Like you see these people at like Gallery Shemuld or Jahangir Art Gallery or NCP or any of those like typical South Mumbai landmarks, and you're like, that is an NCPA lady. So I love her style as well. I just
Yeah.
love all of the aura that she has.
Yeah.
But Hero Hiralal is a movie that I watched when I was very little. Well, not, I wasn't little, but I was in college and I was in Mumbai, and I watched it during the afternoon time
Mm.
slot. And it is one of the most hysterical satires about the film industry that I've seen. It's by Ketan Mehta,
Ah,
who made
yes.
Mirch Masala, Bhavni Bhavai. He's made Oh Darling Ye Hai India. He's made our favorite Maya Mein Saab. And this movie also does have Deepa Sahi in it. Nasruddin Shah in Hero Hiralal is a hoot. He is
Yes.
so funny. He is such a like Bollywood star wannabe, and I really think that he could have, I feel like he could have made it as a masala hero. He certainly tried with like Tridev and Tirchi Topi Wale and everything. He has a choreographed dance number in this and he pulls it off so well. I just
Wow.
think like because of the beauty standards of the time and the way he looks and his physicality, I think that's what held him back. Because I mean, Nasruddin Shah has the acting chops. He can run circles around most people. And he has such golden retriever energy in this movie, and he's funny and he's flashy and hilarious. And it's an ensemble cast. It has Mohan Gokhale, it has Saeed Jaffrey,
Mm.
it has all these like really funny people. And Sanjana is in it. Oh, it has Rohini Hattangadi as her stepmom, who's like
Oh,
so
wow.
evil
Yeah.
and such a shrew. And she wears all these like translucent chiffon saris and pearl necklaces. And she's very like, do you have the money? My daughter will only talk to you if you have money. And Sanjana is so good in this film. It's her first
Wow.
film. She plays a starlet. She plays Rupa, who really wants to become a heroine. Some of it is the fact that her mom is like a momager and she's hell-bent on making her
Mm,
star because all she cares about is cash. But it is also Rupa's own dream. And I've never seen an actress portray a starlet or an actor on screen in such a gentle way, because usually they're portrayed as like daring and cool and fun and ambitious and driven and all of those things, like Urmila's character in Rangila, or some of the other movies like Main Madhuri Dixit Banna Chahti, or films like that. But in this one, she's so meek, she's so gentle, she
mm,
clearly has no one looking out for her. She says in a scene to Nasruddin Shah that her dad died when she was very little, and it's basically just she and her mom.
mm,
And we later find out the mom is a stepmother, and she pretty much just cares about the money. Like, to her, Sanjana Kapoor is just a golden goose, and she's just
mm,
this young, beautiful woman who is trying to make her way in the world and who's trying to make a name for herself in the film industry. And she's in a relationship with Kiran Kumar, who is hysterical, but also so slappable as the hero, who is like, he's a superstar and he's such a jerk to her, and he makes comments like, oh well, you're lucky to be with me because I'm a star and I can make you a star and stuff. And I'm like, ugh, just shut up. But she's really good in this film. She does the same thing that Jennifer does, where her dialogue delivery is not the strongest. Her voice modulation is not the best, although her Hindi, she's very fluent in it,
mm,
and she has pretty much no accent to speak of.
mm,
But her dialogue delivery leaves a lot to be desired. However, her face, her
mm,
eyes, her micro expressions, she's just lovely.
mm,
I feel very protective towards the character of Rupa. And when you're watching this movie, I don't think I'm watching Sanjana Kapoor. I feel like I'm watching Rupa, and I'm watching this
mm,
young, sweet, naive girl who really has no one looking out for her. And even the guy that thinks he's in love with her, which is Nasir, he's not everything he seems to be. Like, he has his own flaws. And this movie also has one of my favoriteest songs of all time that no one ever talks about. It's called Sapno Ki Duniya Hai. It's a world of dreams and illusion.
oh,
It's by Lata Mangeshkar and is shot beautifully. She's wearing a red bridal outfit and she's walking along the rocks at Cuff Parade, and there's just the waves coming in and out, and it's so spectacular. I'll
mm,
put the link to it
yeah.
in the. So I really like her in this movie. How much of it is her being good and how much of it is her basically just playing herself, like, not the traumatic family background, but like the naivete and the sweetness and the innocence and just the youth,
Mm,
right? Like, she's so young in this movie. But I really feel like she could have had a really good career as an actress as well. However, Sanjana Kapoor has said in interviews that she wasn't really that interested in acting.
mm,
Her first love was always theater, and so Prithvi was always where her heart lay. And she
yeah.
kind of likes being the woman who's making those things happen. But I do wish she'd done a few more films. I would have loved to see her on screen. She looks such a spitting image of Shashi too, which is also why I love her.
Yeah.
Have you seen any Sanjana Kapoor movies or no?
And I started Hero Hiralal once,
Hmm.
and I didn't get very far. And what I remember is I couldn't grab on to it sort of tonally. I was like, what's going on
Hmm.
here? But I
It's
need
very
to,
goofy.
yeah, I need to try again. I'm
Yeah,
very intrigued by everything that you're saying. And I've never read much about the film on purpose because I do want to,
right.
see it. Um,
Tonally, it's very similar to Jaane Bhi Do Yaro or Oh
uh,
Darling Ye Hai India. It's
uh-huh.
satirical, it's goofy,
Yeah.
and there are scenes in it that I believe Farah Khan completely ripped off for Om Shanti Om.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like there's a scene where Kiran Kumar is shooting because he's the star
Yeah.
and he's like acting, blah, blah, blah. And Hero Hiralal, he's so obsessed with films, right? Nasir, his character comes out of the thing and he just like waves like that. And then, of course, the director gets mad and he's like, Kaun hai ye? Isko bahar feko, because he just wants to see himself on the monitor. And you see that in Om Shanti Om as well. But
Wow.
Hero Hiralal is one of the best films made about films themselves and about people who are trying to make it in the movies. It's very sweet. It's also got a little bit of a shade of Luck by Chance in it, like the wittiness and the subversive stuff. And because it's Ketan Mehta and his brain is just Ulta
Yeah.
Pulta. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things that happen in this movie where like what? Like there's a maut ka khel and everything. Deepa Sahi is a corporate type, but also a superstar called Sitara Devi who's trying to monetize Nasir's death. It's hilarious. But tonally, you kind of have to like go into that oh darling ye hai India kind of absurd, like theater of the absurd
Yeah.
kind of zone. But I think you would really enjoy it.
I
So I
definitely
like
need to watch
Sanjana
it.
in it. Oh my God. Do we want to talk about Sultanate?
We do, and I was remembering that I've actually written about this for the publication Anti-Serious. Um, and I, as I believe I've said, have a very, very soft spot for these historical films that are not set in any real time or
Yeah.
place at like fictitious Stan or whatever. Like I love that. This film is so goofy. Well, I shouldn't say goofy. It's a lot. It's
It's very over
jam
the top.
packed, like you
Yeah.
said. My opening sentence is sometimes you just want to get engulfed in a film that refuses to be contained.
Yeah.
So this is
It
right up
is
my
very,
alley, this film.
it's very chaotic good, isn't it? This
Yeah,
movie.
very chaotic.
Also, I was won over by Sultanate. I've never watched this film, first of all. I've just never felt the need to.
I think it's kind of fallen off the, like, it doesn't
Yeah.
quite seem to fit into the, I don't really believe in so bad it's good, but I know that's a thing
Hmm.
people like to say. So it doesn't quite fit there. And it doesn't really fit into like legit, this is good for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of just
It gets kind of lost in the shuffle. Plus, it doesn't have music to make it
right.
memorable. Like, I'm pretty sure the only reason people like Khuda Gawai is because of the music, but this doesn't really have good music either.
Yeah.
But I decided to watch Sultanate, A, because I wanted to watch something Karan Kapoor starred in for this episode, but
And
also
there's
because I
not
discovered
shit
it
you
has
saw.
Sunny Deol
Yes.
And Dharmendra is Sunny
Yes.
Deol's dad in this. And Sunny's love interest is Sri Devi. And I was like, how have I not watched this movie yet? And so my patience was rewarded almost instantaneously because I fired up my laptop. I had my tea with me. I had a cat on my lap, and I started watching it. And literally, I kid you not, the first frame of this film is a grumpy camel. As we know, that is the spirit animal of this podcast. Patron saint of this podcast, of course, is Devanand, and we are all about grumpy camels here. So it starts with a grumpy camel, and he's just like, "Mwah." And I was like, oh my God, we are off to a start, like a flying start. And then it just gets goofier and goofier. And
Yeah.
there's Amrish Puri, and he is just such a Mr. Burns kind of villain. He is so
Yeah.
over the top as only Amrish Puri can be. And he's formidable. And there's just a lot of craziness in this movie. And Karan Kapoor actually enters this film about 40 minutes into the film
Way late. Yeah.
because I was enjoying the movie, especially because Sunny Deol, prime of his life, riding bareback on a horse, wearing tiny little outfits, wearing a sheikh's turban and whatnot, speaking Hindi that does not sound even remotely like Urdu or Arabic or anything in this fictitious stan, as you said. It was all it needed was Hema Malini to show up and have like a thick Tamil accent. That's all it needed. I actually wish she was there. I would have loved to see her in it. Um, but it was so good. And Sridevi is like a haughty princess who just casually walks around telling her slaves to like behead random people. And I was like, this is the heroine? It is terrible, but it's so enjoyable. And then 40 minutes into the film, Karan Kapoor comes, and I loved the credits because the credits were like Sunny Deol on a horseback, and it was like Sunny Deol. And then it was Dharmendra looking fierce, and it was like Dharmendra. And then it was Sri Devi looking fierce and wearing like the contact lenses, and it was like Sri Devi. And then there's a shot of Karan Kapoor falling with his sword, and his expression is like, it's the most derpy expression ever. And it says, introducing Karan Kapoor. And I was like, this is a metaphor for his career. He is so bad, Beth. He is so bad. I can't get over how terrible he is.
He's
And
very
he
bad.
is seriously hot. I mean,
He's very attractive. Yeah.
talk about pretty privilege. I would do anything for Karan Kapoor. Well, I would do anything for Sunny though, but I would also consider doing some things for Karan Kapoor. But he is absolutely delectable.
Yeah.
He's tall and lanky. He basically looks like a Caucasian Shashi Kapoor, is basically what he
Yeah, he's
is.
blonde Shashi Kapoor. It's
He is blonde and
weird.
blue eyed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
weird. Even more, I feel it's even more here than in the Bombay Dyeing ads, where he's also
yeah,
quite handsome. But there's something
with the
about seeing him
pout.
in motion. He seems blonder or something. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
very weird.
It's very weird,
Yeah.
but he is so horrifically bad. He is the definition of shut up and look pretty. Just stand in a corner and look pretty and give good close ups because you should not be opening your mouth. The dialogue delivery, horrible. The acting, absolutely non existent. He says everything in a monotone. He's so flat. I can't tell if
Mm.
he's angry. There's a scene where he talks about how he needs to take revenge. And I was like, boy, you don't have the energy to take revenge. He talks about taking revenge in the same tone of voice with which I would say, I need to do laundry today. Like, it's such a random,
Yeah.
he's bad.
A
And Juhi Chawla is in this movie, and it's her first
yes.
film, and
Yes.
she is bringing it.
Yeah.
She is being such a heroine, like such a typical heroine. Like she's doing the hair flips and she's doing the sharmana and she's dancing so prettily, and everything is very like, I am heroine material. Like you can tell this girl is going to go really far in Bollywood. And their dances are so bad. He doesn't know what to do with his arms. Like there's a scene where he has to like, hold her arms and they just have to like gently sway. And he looks like he's attacking her. I was like, your father is Shashi Kapoor. Have you seen how your dad romanced Sharmila Tagore and all of the heroines of his time? Have you seen how he romanced Nanda? Have you seen how he,
Mm.
just the way he moved his body? What are you doing? It is so
Mm.
bad. He is one Kapoor that I'm very glad that he didn't do too many movies because that boy had no future in Bollywood.
Uh, I'm looking at the piece I wrote about it, which I will
Hmm.
link to in our notes, but there's um uh a friend described him as furniture like.
Yes, he is extremely beautiful
And
furniture.
I do think I don't know how on earth you're supposed to make an impression as a male lead in a film that already has Sunny Deol and Dharmendra in it. That
Yeah.
was not,
And Amrish Puri.
and Amrish Puri and Tom Alter. Like, if you want some
Yeah.
random Caucasian looking person, he's over there and
Tom
he's way
Atler
better.
is the Arabic Raja.
Yes,
I was like, okay, sure.
it's just, it would have taken a lot more than a lot of people had, but way more than this poor guy had.
Yeah. I don't know whose brilliant idea it was for him to debut in this film because you're just going to be eaten alive by all the
It would
stalwarts
be
on
interesting to
screen.
see if anyone else ever any especially heroes, right? Did anyone else debut as a hero in a Mukul Anand film? Because that's a lot. That's a lot to do.
Yeah.
You gotta have some like chops under you to do this.
He doesn't
Preferably your
even
name is
have,
Deal, but
yeah. No, he doesn't even have screen presence because there is a
no.
scene where he is confronting Dharmendra and Dharmendra just looks tired.
You know that scene in the first Indiana Jones where the guy comes at Indy with the big sword and Indy just pulls out the gun and shoots him? He's like,
Yeah.
ugh, I don't have time for this.
Meanwhile, the Dharam and Sunny, they all like father son romance is amazing. I love their chemistry together. Apne is one of my favorite movies of all time. I will die on the hill that says Apne is wonderful and people should see it. But yeah, I think debuting in this movie was just a horrific idea. He should have pulled a Sanjana or a Kunal, and he should have done a smaller movie where he had more of an author back role
And
as
I get
maybe a
when you
dining
look
table.
when you look like he does, people are going to want to put you in something more mainstreamy and everything. But
Yeah.
he's not even just Ken.
No. Like, I guess his job could be desert.
His job is desert.
His job is
Mhm.
desert. But it's like, because the way he looks, he is seriously so handsome and tall, and he has the body and everything. And he has the lankiness, he has the languorous smile, the hair. I mean, he's stunning.
Yeah.
He could have been like the next Hrithik Roshan or something, but there is no acting, there is no dialogue delivery, there is no screen presence, there's no dancing, there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's actually very sad because I think that if he actually had the goods, he could have really, I think people would have loved to see Caucasian Shashi Kapoor.
Let's see. So he does this. Oh, he does Loha, which I've not seen yet.
I have not seen.
And then one more film called Afsar, and that's it. Oh, and he's in Jewel in the Crown. I forgot about that.
I don't know that movie.
Oh, it's a TV series. So when I was little,
Oh,
I was 10 when that came out. It was one of those mini series of the 80s that people went bananas for. And it is the namesake of a cocktail my friend invented, which is gin, ginger beer, lime juice, and cardamom bitters.
it sounds
Delicious.
amazing.
Delicious. She made that up because we were going to watch Jewel in the Crown. We had Indian takeout. We were like, we need an Indian cocktail. So she made one up.
Oh,
Try it. I'm not going to give you measurements because you just sort of combine in the way
yeah,
that you like. The cardamom bitters really do make it. It's still good without, but like get the cardamom bitters. You can get them on
right.
the internet if you can't find them locally. So, so
Wow.
you can have it
So
in a Moscow Mule mug if you want to, but like
mm,
nice and chilled. It's super good.
maybe cut a mirchi lengthwise and then
Sure.
use that as a garnish or
Sure
something. That would
do.
be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So, Jewel in the Crown, is it an American production or
It's
British or?
British, and
Okay.
it's based on the Raj Quartet novels.
Okay.
We only made it through the first one. I don't remember why. We were just not into it, but I like Art Malik is in it.
Okay. Was it just
Yeah.
very dire?
I don't really remember. I think we were mostly bored, but
Mm,
if we should go back and rewatch. That same friend and I watched I Claudius during the beginning of the pandemic and had a lot of fun with that. So
nice.
the late 70s and the 80s were full of these amazing miniseries. And because there was no other option, like people went bananas and like we all tuned in to watch them. And like 1984, most of us didn't have VCRs either. So
Right.
like you had to watch it when it came on Sunday nights or
Yeah.
whatever. It was a big, 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 big deal. So we remember our parents watching it, but we don't remember it. So we wanted to
Yeah.
try. So we're gonna have to try
My dad
again.
was obsessed with Around the World in 80 Days.
Mm,
The one where it wasn't Cleves wasn't in it, was it? I don't remember. But like we had that on VCR.
yeah.
So
Oh,
interesting.
Saeed Joffrey is in it because of course he is.
Of course he is.
He's everywhere. Zora Segal is in it.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that your public library would have had on VHS 20 years ago. Now, I don't know how you'll get it's probably streaming somewhere or other. So that's one to watch, maybe,
I
but
think your
not for
friend,
Karan Kapoor.
no, I think you and your friend should watch Sandokan.
I will watch Sandokan gladly, and we could still drink that beverage, I think.
Yes. And what you could do is like for one episode you could have that beverage and then for another you could have like an Aperol spritz and
Right, an
you could just
Italian
mix it
one.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that'd be
see,
great.
Karan Kapoor, he could have been another Kabir Bedi too. But
Yeah,
again,
that's a really good
you
potential
need skills
parallel in a
though.
way. Yeah, but
Yeah.
he
No.
does
Like
not have
Kabir
it.
Bedi can act
Right,
and he has the
right.
voice. Mm.
I am curious. You said you thought that a blonde Shashi Kapoor, or maybe more slightly macho version of
Mhm.
Shashi Kapoor who's blonde would have had a good shot. And I wonder, I think that's interesting to think about because we all know about white beauty standards being shoved down the throats of cultures all over the world, but also at the same time, would it really have caught on as a hero? Being the hero is a little different than being an uncle
Yeah.
or a Tom Alter, right? He's never the
Yeah.
star.
You
It's
know, he
interesting to
could
think
have
about.
maybe tried to, but you don't know until you try and you
Right.
can push the envelope. For example, one of the things that Aishwarya did, I mean, not intentionally, but it happened is until Aishwarya Rai, if you were an Indian woman who was extremely fair skinned and you had light eyes, you were only cast as a vamp. It did not
Mm,
matter how good you were at your job. You could only be the vamp because there was some sort of cultural stigma against
yeah.
people who had light eyes. So I mean, think
Yeah.
about it. It's like Sarika,
Oh,
Kivi
yeah.
Katkar. They just could not break out of that mold. They were always
Mm.
Rakhi is one of the few
Oh, yeah.
light-eyed actresses.
Hmm.
She's really the only one I can think of who was light-eyed
Hmm.
and managed to make a career.
Hmm.
Someone like Karishma Kapoor, as long as she had her actual baby blue eyes, she couldn't hack it as an actress. When
Hmm.
Manish Malhotra did her makeover to make her like to glam her up or whatever and get her out from Babita Kapoor's costume design, he actually had to put brown contact lenses. So Raja Hindustani
Wow.
and, the films after that are movies in which Karishma Kapoor basically wore brown contact lenses, because
Never
as
thought
long
about
as her
that.
eyes were blue, it just wasn't working. Now, you can
Right.
have hazel eyes like Bebo does. A lot of actresses have hazel eyes, Shraddha Kapoor and stuff,
Mm.
but
Oh yeah.
that's acceptable. Until Aishwarya Rai, you could not be a heroine if you had green eyes. You had to
Mm.
be a vamp or a side character or
Yeah.
something. Green eyes were definitely associated with being, which is why all the Nagin movies, right?
Right.
Like there's all
Right.
the Nagin movies, or anytime that Sridevi or Rekha, anytime they wanted to portray someone who's bad, or they wanted to portray someone who's like not necessarily bad, but definitely a woman you shouldn't mess with. Like in Khun Bhari Mang, they would wear the contact
Mm.
lenses. So until Aishwarya Rai, you couldn't be a heroine. I'm sure people told Aishwarya that she had
Interesting.
to wear brown contact lenses if she wanted to make it, but she's
Mm.
probably the first person, apart from Rocky. Rocky's the outlier who managed to.
Hmm.
So you never know. I mean, it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
I mean, there were people who thought that Hrithik Roshan's looks weren't, very acceptable. I mean, like he's
Mm.
gorgeous, but it's
Right.
almost like you can't be too gorgeous,
Yeah.
because the average ticket goer needs to be able to find you aspirational, I guess,
Yeah, you got to be able to
or
project yourself into that in some way,
exactly,
or
which
for
is
a lot
why
of people anyway.
Amitabh works. Shashi
Mm.
Kapoor's level of prettiness and fairness, and Rishi Kapoor's level of prettiness and fairness is kind of the max, I
You're pushing
feel.
it, Kapoor.
Yeah, that's kind of the max that Indian audiences would have accepted. But you never know. I mean,
Yeah.
times change, and
Yeah.
I feel like Karan Kapoor, because he was such a craze with the Bombay Dyeing posters. I mean, even today in Mumbai, if you go to really like small shops, if you go to like your little neighborhood kirana wala dukan where you have to pick up some stuff, you'll see like a random dusty Karan Kapoor Bombay Dyeing poster or
He's
calendar or something.
beautiful.
He is gorgeous. So
Yeah.
I don't know, or maybe he could have had a career kind of like Kabir Bedi, where
Hmm.
he's portraying these more like supporting actor roles, but he's still, doing a lot. Yeah, but I mean, if you can't act, then there's no point, right?
I mean, for some people there is, but for
Yeah.
not for as many.
Yeah. No, and you still have to bring something else to the table.
Right.
Like
Right.
I know Katrina Kaif managed to become like an A-list star, but she can still dance
She can
circles
dance.
around
Yeah.
everyone. And she
Yeah.
still has that like Vava Voom factor that
Hmm.
people want to see her. Like
Yeah.
she's great eye candy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think of this set of Kapoors? Like, what would we say about them as contrasted with um
Raja's kids.
yeah, and Raja's kids, obviously we didn't do Rishi, but we have done an
Yeah.
episode we've done two very Rishi centric episodes. We have our
Hmm.
discussion of his autobiography, and then we have our Kawali episode, which does discuss him heavily.
Hmm.
So
Oh, Junoon, by the way, also opens with a Kawali.
of course, of
Yeah.
course. I'm
Like
also
literally the
realizing
credits.
I misspoke. Kunal Kapoor had done a film as a like a young adult
Mm,
before Vijayta, so that is not his debut. I apologize.
okay.
Gotta get my Kapoor facts straight.
Right.
But yeah, I think like as a set, what do we want to say about them? It's
I
interesting.
like the fact that they don't seem like they were particularly entitled, and I like the fact that
Mm,
they were not nepo babies that were shoved down our throats.
they
I
were not.
don't Yeah, I don't personally have an issue with nepo babies as long as they can do the job. Like Shashi Kapoor is a nepo baby, but he's great. But I think the reason there's so much backlash about nepo babies today is that you have absolutely horrible, horrible, they have no skills whatsoever, and they're constantly shoved down our throats. I mean, Janvi Kapoor has been doing movies for how long now, and she doesn't have
Yeah.
an ounce of her mother's talent. But I think that era, you still had people that if you weren't good at your job, you were chucked out of projects, and your
Mm,
dad was not going to finance films for you. And so I like that they didn't sort of overstay their welcome.
mm,
um, I have fond feelings about Sanjana Kapoor. I always will, and I will always like Hero Hiralal as a movie. But who knows if she'd kept doing more films, and you could see that as if she was trying to play someone other than herself, maybe I would have realized that she's not a good actress at all,
mm,
right? So I like the fact that they figured out what they wanted to do with their life. And it seems like all three of them are successful at a chosen
Yeah,
profession,
and they're
all
all
seem
in
to
these
have done.
creative lines of
Yeah.
work and things like that. Yeah.
I mean, Sanjana Kapoor literally received like the Order of Letters or whatever, one of the highest French honors
Hmm.
of all things. So she's clearly excellent at her
Hmm.
job. So I respect them because I feel like they didn't try to like cash in on the Kapoor legacy,
Mm.
and they didn't keep shoving themselves down our throats. And perhaps that also is something that they owe to their upbringing.
Yeah.
Perhaps their parents told them that it's better to be good at something and excel at it rather than, you know,
Yeah.
just
I
struggle on forever.
I would love to read a biography of Jennifer Kendal. I think
Mm,
like what a fascinating life. And
yeah.
she died at 50. She was very young.
Hmm.
Um, so if her children ever got together to write that, that would be really, really interesting. But I get this sense from what I've read that she was a um bit of a grounding influence. So
Mm,
maybe some of the other Kapoor Bahus just, well, from what we've seen, like, well, obviously Babita stood up for herself in some
yeah.
certain ways, but some of the others did not. And I think had a rougher time of it than Jennifer. Not to say that Jennifer's life was
Hmm.
always super easy, but I think she had, just being foreign,
Hmm.
she had a different set of expectations walking into that marriage, and
Hmm.
was able to do something a little bit different
Hmm.
that maybe in the end was really good for her kid, for their kids. That seemed like, and it was certainly
Right.
good for Shashi, I would say,
Yeah.
based on what I understand. So that's interesting. It seems like it was a really good partnership.
Hmm.
And it looks like their kids have flown well, right? Have
Yeah.
um really, really made great paths for themselves with
I
some help, I'm sure, but like,
Right.
are doing things that matter to them in ways that
Yeah.
are great.
I did read an interesting anecdote. It was a Sanjana Kapoor interview, actually, and she was talking about how her parents met. And
Mm,
Shashi and Jennifer were both working, and Jeffrey Kendall requested Prithviraj Kapoor to loan Shashi to him to do a few plays because they were like double booked or something. And that's when Shashi went backstage and he spoke with Jennifer, and they were interested in each other and everything. And neither of them had a lot of money. And Sanjana Kapoor talks about how her grandfather, so Jeffrey Kendall, was completely against the match.
yeah,
He did not want them to marry.
yeah.
And when they decided, no, we're going to do it, and Jennifer Kendall was like, nope, I'm going to marry him, and that's all it is. Apparently, Shashi Kapoor, they just didn't have any cash on them, and so Shashi Kapoor, somehow Shami Kapoor and Geeta Bali found out. And they were very supportive and kind, and they were ready to help them and support them and be like, "This is fine. We accept her, and this is great." And they kind of like smoothed the path for them. And also, they were doing plays in Malaysia, I believe, but they didn't have enough money to come back because they lost some money. And apparently, they sent Shashi sent a telegram to Raj Kapoor, and Raj Kapoor send them two tickets back to Mumbai, and so that's how they managed to. So I was like, okay, I like the fact that it seems like the brothers were trying to like
Yeah,
ease the path for him, trying to
yeah.
support him and help him, and apparently Jennifer Kendall and Geeta Bali actually had like a good relationship, and Shami was like a big supporter of their marriage. So it
Oh,
does seem like she was accepted very easily into the Kapoor family. If anything, the person who was being a thorn in their backside was Jeffrey Kendall.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so anyway, I like Shami Kapoor, so I was like, well, of course he supported them. The only other thing I have to say is I love Karishma and Kareena Kapoor, but there's one tiny little thing that they have done over the years that really irks me.
Hmm.
And two specific examples that I'll give is recently when Karishma Kapoor was being interviewed for Murder Mubarak, which we covered in an episode, and also when Bebo did the interview with Rendezvous with Simi Garewal.
Mm,
Both times they were told, oh, we've always heard like Kapoor girls don't act, and you guys were, Karishma was the first Kapoor daughter to act, and isn't that
mm,
great?
mm,
They
mm.
never refuted. I watched the video interview where Karishma Kapoor is like just smiling and nodding along, and I'm like, excuse me, have you forgotten your auntie? Have you forgotten Sanjana Kapoor? And same thing with Bebo in Rendezvous with Simi Garewal. She's like, yes, well, my sister was a trailblazer. I'm like, have you heard this name, Sanjana Kapoor? She was the first like Kapoor daughter in a
Yeah.
way. They just always omit her. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, yes, the journalist is the one who omits them and they always give them sort of their flowers. But it's on you to say, well, actually, the person who paved the road was actually Sanjana Kapoor, and then I debuted after her. But they never ever mention her. And it
Yeah.
seems like such a tiny and petty thing to do. Like, why not? Just
Uh,
say
I mean,
it.
we've talked about this, right? Like the statements that get made about the Kapoors mostly are about the Raj branch. And
Yes.
I understand why that is the case, but it's not the full
Yeah.
picture at all. And it's not that hard to remember that quite famous Shashi also had kids who acted, right? Like
Yeah.
these are not unknown people
Right. And these are
at
people that
all.
regular laymen have literally written books about them. Like we
Hmm.
know about this family. They're not
Hmm. Not a secret.
nobodies. So
No.
then on like in video interviews and stuff, you're like, yes, we were trailblazers. I'm like, no, you weren't. And
You
as
were
much
more
as I love them,
successful
sure.
for sure, but like you are
Yeah.
not actually the first to act. Yeah.
So annoying. But yeah, it's like just a tiny little pet peeve of mine.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about the this branch of the Kapoor family? Clearly our favorite branch.
I'm just sad that it's coming to a close, this little branch, because I've really enjoyed
Yeah.
digging into all of these things. But I will be distracted soon enough by getting to do Rishi and Neetu, and that will be
Yes.
fun.
That'll
And
be
I
fun.
do we've gotten over, I mean, we had the hardest ones, I think, were, Randir, Rajiv, Babita. Um, so this will be, but I'm looking forward to learning more about especially charisma, because I've seen very few of her films.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
and
I feel
so
like I'm very well versed in Karishma's filmography,
and I'm
even the
sure that
absolutely terrible ones.
like if I had been born in India the
Yeah.
same year that I was in the US, like I would be quite familiar with her
Yeah.
films.
She
I'm
was
sure
she was
like we're the same
everywhere.
age. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that, but yeah, so it's just she's not someone, and because she was such a star in the era that
Right.
very strongly avoid. Um, that's not the right adverb, you know what I mean? Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I have a lot of learning to do. But yeah, this little branch has been fun to dig back into. And there's several.
Yeah.
I was tidying up my unwatched DVD collection the other day. I put a
Mm.
picture on Twitter. There's so many films in there. I was digging through there because I thought to myself, I swear I have a DVD of 36 Charangi Lane. And I did, but it took me a while to
Okay.
find it. But in there, I'm like, oh, what else is in here that I haven't seen yet? It reminded me of there's no Shashi films in there. No, there was one Shashi film in there, I believe, one of his later ones. So I was like, okay,
Also,
that's
your
gotta be interesting.
fake New Delhi Times DVD.
So I did buy a New Delhi Times DVD from Britain that said it was subtitled. It's auto-generated English out of Hindi, which makes no sense whatsoever, of
Gibberish.
course. So it was not an expensive experiment, but I was skeptical and I was right. So I just added to my coaster collection.
Yeah. I remember you and I were like tracking it, and then you were like, the phone number on the receipt or whatever is this area code. What area code is that? And I looked it up and it was like Yugoslavia or
It
something.
was
And
something
it was like,
weird.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget where it actually shipped from, but yeah, it was very strange.
Are there
So
any movies from this branch that you like, any movies that you want to see that are on your watch list
I
next?
do want to see Hero Hiralal, and I
Okay.
want to see so Jennifer Kendal is also in the Far Pavilions, which
Oh, I've seen that.
I have not seen. She plays Mrs. Vickery.
Oh, yes, I remember her. But like I saw Far Pavilion so long ago. We got
Yeah,
the cassette from the British Council. So it
nice.
was so long ago, but I remember
Yeah.
Far Pavilions. It was really good.
Yeah, and I heard a lot of people
Okay.
talk about the book. So
Yeah.
I would like to watch that. But I've seen all of her other movies now. So she does Shakespeare Walla, Bombay Talkie, Janoon, Charangi Lane, Heat and Dust, Far Pavilions, and Gari Bari. I had forgot she was in
Mm.
in that as well. Um, so if you need someone to play like the aging representation of the English and their failure in
Yeah.
India, she is your gal.
Yeah.
She is and that is of course also part of her actual life, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. And if I guess I haven't plugged it for a little while, but her sister Felicity Kendal, who's very well known from British TV to audiences of that, wrote an autobiography called White Cargo.
Mm.
Maybe not a title we would use anymore.
What
Um,
does that mean? I read it and I was like, is she referring to cargo pants? Obviously not. But what does that mean? What is white cargo?
I Yeah, I just assume, I don't know if that's an expression that means something in other forms of English that I'm not familiar with. It just sounds kind of like she's calling out her own whiteness in reference to her
Okay, it's
upbringing
a
in India.
weird
I don't
title.
know. I don't know. But that there's a lot in there about Shashi and Jennifer in particular. So if you want to
Oh.
know more about Jennifer Kendall's life, that is the place to go in my uh not expansive but not tiny experience reading about the Kapoors. That's that's where
Hmm.
to go, and it's quite interesting. Yeah, I just I would I would watch I should see what else Kunal has done and then look for them as little children in their dad's projects, as is true of all Kapoors, it seems like. So watch them
Oh,
running around in Utsav and things like that.
this is a point that you and I were making over WhatsApp, where you said that it's so interesting that in the in the Shashi Kapoor productions, you always see the family, like you see
Yeah.
the wife or the kids or whatever,
Yeah.
whereas the brothers themselves don't really act together
Mm-mm.
ever. Maybe there's just one film where there's like an overlap. And I remember saying to you, I think it was just for like money saving
I
purposes.
think you're right.
It was that time honored tradition of families all over the world where it's like you get your kids to participate in the
And
business.
that's how Jennifer was raised, right? She and her sister
Right.
and her parents traveling Shakespeare Company. They were on trains going all over India and other
Yeah.
parts of Asia and stuff. So that would have been a life that she was quite familiar with. Now, did she like it? I don't
Right.
know. But
Yeah. But it was probably a
uh,
way to save money. And it's like the best thing that you can say to your kid, right?
yeah,
Like this will go on your resume. I
right.
mean,
And
you're
hopefully it's
going to be in
fun. Like
Utsav.
I'm picturing, people my age who would be like, oh, the family trip and the kids are in the back of the station wagon, like rolling
Right.
around with no seatbelts on. And like I'm picturing the Kapoors like da 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 in some kind of
Yeah.
funny jalopy or whatever, which I
Sitting
think
on
Shashi
Rekha's
liked cars,
lap.
but yeah.
I would sit on Rekha's lap. I would still sit on Rekha's lap. I mean, I'd be escorted by security and I'd spend a night
Right.
in
I feel like
jail, but
sitting at her
honestly, it
feet
would be
is the
worth it.
better.
What?
Sitting at her feet is the
No, I want to sit on her lap and I want her to pull my cheeks.
digging into this has made me sad all over again that Shashi is
Yeah,
gone. And I know he was
I
very
know.
ill and things like that, but I just and he hadn't done any movies for quite some time, obviously. Although
Yeah.
he did work quite late into his life. We didn't
Hmm.
talk about In Custody at all, but that would be one that
Yeah.
we could discuss. But I,
He did enter that like elder statesman
oh yeah.
stage. Yeah.
And
With the
is still
gray
doing
hair and
Merchant and
everything.
Ivory and interesting foreign things
Yeah.
and just doing what he liked to do. So Godspeed, Kapoors, this branch. I love you
Yeah.
all. I'm biased. I fully admit I'm biased, but
Yeah.
I have such a happy glow about this branch of the family.
Yeah. They're the most relatable while
Yeah,
at the same time being untouchable because they're film
right.
stars, but
Right.
you almost feel like you know them, which is of course
Yeah.
rubbish.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do give you like a happy, smiley glow on your face, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I
Mhm.
guess our next Kapoor episode is gonna be on Rishi, which I'm very excited about, and
Yes.
Neetu.
Yes.
And then we'll do episodes on Lolo, Bebo, and then Ranbir Kapoor. So we've also done
Yeah.
quite a lot of Ranbir
Whew.
Kapoor talking
We have.
in this podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I mean
hard
he's
to
really good.
so we're gonna have to watch Sawaria.
No, we don't have to. I
But
saw
we've
it
like talked about
once.
oh, so many more of his films. Like what's left that we haven't already talked about? Oh no.
I'll find something obscure to talk about before I
I
talk about Samaria.
I'd watch it because Ronnie is there and I love Ronnie.
I would
So
only watch it for her. She is fire in that
yeah.
song, Sawan Bita Jai. Oh, she's wearing like a blue sari, like a midnight blue sari. And she has flowers in her hair, and she is
Hmm.
just stunning. You know, Rani Mukherjee is an actress that does not get enough kudos for her dancing.
I agree.
No one ever
Agree.
talks about what a phenomenal dancer she is. I don't know why. I think it's
Goodbye.
because so good. Well, actually, even Sava Dollar from Aya.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, she's really good at dance, but no one ever talks about it, but it's okay because we'll talk about it.
We'll get there.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Okay.
am really interested if anyone listening to this also kind of misses the Shashi Jennifer kids and like, do you wish they'd kind of had more of a go in cinema?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think? You know, is Loha worth watching even to laugh at it? I'm willing.
Maybe if you're drunk or
I
something.
don't need to, but I'm willing.
You've watched enough nonsense over the years that you can watch Loha.
That's right. My threshold is ever growing.
Exactly.
I'm
It's not like we have
strong.
standards here, Beth.
We do not. We do not. And please, if you've watched 36 Chowringhee Lane, especially recently, please come talk with me about it because I was very moved by it. And there's a
Yeah.
lot I don't want to say about it because I don't want to give away spoilers, but it's so lovely
I really want to
about it.
watch it. I just ran out of time because I
Yeah.
watched like 3 movies for this episode and I was like,
It's a breezy like 2 hours, I think. It's not very
okay,
long.
good.
And it was, yeah, so charming.
Yeah, that's on my list. So I'll watch 36 Ringi Lane and I definitely want to watch Vijeta.
You'll love
Vijeta
it.
sounds like
Yeah.
completely my cup of
So
tea.
I think you'll really love it.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. And I've never seen Kunal Kapoor in anything, so it'll be
Yeah.
great.
So cutie.
Oh, okay. Well, that concludes this episode of Filmi Ladies. Thank you for joining us. Please tell us which movies of Jennifer Kendall's or any of their kids that you've seen and what you think about them. Do you think that Karan Kapoor could have pushed the envelope and been like a very Caucasian Shashi Kapoor hero? Do you think that could have happened? What are your thoughts on Sanjana Kapoor and Kunal? And which of Jennifer's movies have you seen? And which branch of the three Kapoor siblings is your favorite branch? Let us know. I mean, Shavi
There's
Kapoor
a
unfortunately doesn't have a branch as
there's
such.
a correct answer here. We've made it clear what it is. So if you answer wrong, that's on you.
But we will still support your
We
answer.
will. We will.
We'll just internally judge you, but we won't show it.
Maybe a little.
Right. Thank you for watching. Bye.